Today I want to look at the beginnings of Solomon's rule and reign. 2 Samuel 12 verse 24 says this: Then David comforted his wife Bathsheba, and he went to her and made love to her. She gave birth to a son, and they named him Solomon. The Lord loved him, and because the Lord loved him, he sent word through Nathan the prophet to name him Jedediah. Jedediah, beloved by God. And even though he was from a less than ideal relationship, he was chosen and loved by God right from the beginning. And what we see at the beginning of Solomon's reign is he's put in contrast to his half-brother Adonijah. Adonijah is an example of delusion and self-promotion, because he thinks, right, in this kind of vacuum where King David's now on his deathbed, I'll be king. And so he sets himself up. Obviously, he comes from a good pedigree, and he decides he's going to do it. A few years ago, I was working on a job with my mate Delroy, and we had to go into this flat in Hackney and strip off a load of wallpaper because they had a load of problems in there. Anyway, we went in there and we flicked on the light, and these things scuttled away. The place was infested with cockroaches all over the place. And it was horrible because you're all cootie and stuff. And I remember just going up to my mate Delroy, who's like just working on this bit. And every now and then I just tickled the back of his neck and see him sort of freak out, thinking it's a cockroach laying eggs in him. And when the light goes on, everything's exposed. Adonijah could not walk in the light because he had manipulated the situation. He's forced his claim, and he avoids bringing certain people in. It's all a little bit shady and cloak and dagger. And then we see David still, even though he's on his deathbed, he's still the most powerful man in Israel. And it says in 1 Kings 1, verse 28, the king then took an oath: as surely as the Lord lives, who has delivered me out of every trouble, I will surely carry out this very day what I swore to you by the Lord, the God of Israel. Solomon, your son, shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne in my place. So we see this. What happens is they get to it straight away. This great entourage, 50 people are sent ahead of him. Solomon is placed on David's own mule. Trumpets are blasted, and they're declaring, "Long live King Solomon." Adonijah now feels terribly guilty because he's not the chosen one. He's the one that's tried to manipulate it and force it himself. Now he runs into the temple and clings hold of the horns of the altar because he knows, he's like, if Solomon comes, if he was to have his way and it was the other way around, he would kill Solomon. And he thinks, he just doesn't trust that Solomon's intentions are good towards him. So he clings on. And what we see is that this man-made king is clinging on to the trappings of religion rather than trusting in the Lord who raises people up. And see, Solomon doesn't have to strive. He trusts God to raise him up. There's no sort of sense of self-justification or someone else does it for him. There's no striving in Solomon. He walks in the freedom because he's chosen by God and he knows it. And the challenge is to us that often we think that so much of our walk and our fruit is born, and it's all down to us. And it's all, if I get this wrong, oh no, God's not going to come through. Or I'm the only one to see everything. I'm the only one that can see this situation. If God doesn't do it properly, then we're in big trouble. What if God misses it? It all depends on me. The truth is, there's only one Saviour. God really is God. And can be trusted. If he says that you're saved, if he says that you're in, then you ain't got to strive. Because it's down to him. He's bigger than every situation. You cannot out-sin the grace of God. At Calvary, even before Calvary, in the garden we see Jesus. He's just absolutely sobbing his heart out, sweating blood, saying, Father, if there's any other way, I don't want to drink this cup, but not my will but yours. And we see Jesus trusting his Father even unto death. You see, God can even raise us up from the grave if to fulfill his purposes. Nothing is impossible with God. We have not got to strive. The weight of the world is not on our shoulders. Christendom will not fall apart. The church will not crumble. If we do it wrong, God is bigger. And Solomon is a great example of someone that allows God to raise him up. And I want to encourage us that we are those that walk one foot in front of the other, delighting in the freedom that God has called us into, and we bear much fruit for him.